Sometimes the most beautiful celebrations become the backdrop for the ugliest truths. I never thought my brother's wedding would be the day my entire world collapsed, but looking back, maybe I should have seen the signs earlier. Maybe I should have paid attention to the little things that didn't quite add up. My brother Tyler and his fiancée Amanda had been planning their wedding for over a year. It was going to be this big, elaborate affair, 200 guests, outdoor ceremony, the whole 9 yards. My wife Lisa and I had been helping with preparations for months. She seemed genuinely excited about it, which I thought was sweet. She'd always got along well with my family. The morning of the wedding, Lisa was acting a bit strange. She kept checking her phone, which wasn't unusual, but she seemed more secretive about it than normal. When I asked who she was texting, she said it was just work stuff. I didn't think much of it at the time. We arrived at the venue around 3 in the afternoon. It was this beautiful outdoor space with string lights and flowers everywhere. Lisa looked stunning in her blue dress. I remember thinking how lucky I was to have such a beautiful wife. We'd been married for 8 years and I still felt that way about her. The ceremony went perfectly. Tyler and Amanda looked so happy, and I found myself getting a little emotional watching them exchange vows. I caught Lisa wiping away tears too, and I squeezed her hand. She squeezed back, but something felt different about it. Distant maybe. After the ceremony, we moved to the reception area. I was Tyler's best man, so I knew I'd be giving a speech later. I'd practiced it dozens of times, funny stories about growing up with Tyler, how perfect Amanda was for him, all that typical best man stuff. During cocktail hour, I noticed Lisa excusing herself to take phone calls several times. When I asked about it, she seemed irritated and said her boss was being demanding about some project. Deadline. I suggested she turn off her phone for the evening, but she said she couldn't afford to miss any important calls. Dinner was served around 7. Lisa barely touched her food, which was unusual for her. She loved fancy events like this and usually enjoyed every course. She kept glancing around the room like she was looking for someone, but when I asked if everything was okay, she just smiled and said she was fine. The time came for speeches. Tyler's father-in-law spoke first, then Amanda's maid of honor. Finally, it was my turn. I stood up, tapped my champagne glass, and waited for the room to quiet down. I started with the usual jokes about Tyler, embarrassing childhood stories, his terrible taste in music, how Amanda was clearly too good for him. Everyone was laughing, including Tyler and Amanda. I was feeling good about how it was going. Then I moved into the more sentimental part. I talked about how happy I was to see Tyler find someone who loved him for exactly who he was. I mentioned how important family was and how Amanda was now part of our family forever. I know what it's like to find that perfect person, I said, looking at Lisa. Someone who makes you want to be better, who you can't wait to come home to every day. Someone who makes ordinary moments feel special just by being there. I paused, smiling at Lisa, expecting her to smile back. Instead, she looked uncomfortable, almost guilty. That should have been my first real warning sign. I continued, Tyler, you're going to love being married. Coming home to someone who's genuinely excited to see you, who asks about your day and actually listens to the answer. Someone who makes you feel like you're the most important person in their world. I was getting into the emotional part now, really meaning every word. Like just last week, Lisa surprised me by cooking my favorite dinner when I came home early from that business trip. She said she'd been missing me so much that she wanted to do something special. It meant everything to me. I heard a few awes from the crowd, but I also noticed some people looking confused. Lisa's face had gone completely pale. I thought maybe she was just emotional about the speech. That's the kind of love I see between Tyler and Amanda, I continued. The kind where you're always thinking about each other, always wanting to make each other happy. That's when my brother Tyler stood up. He looked confused, almost concerned. Hey Marcus, he said, interrupting my speech. Can I talk to you for a second? The room went quiet. This wasn't part of the plan. Can it wait? I asked. I'm kind of in the middle of something here. No, Tyler said, his voice getting more serious. It can't wait. He walked over to me and I could see real worry in his eyes. He leaned in close and whispered, what business trip are you talking about? What do you mean? I whispered back, confused. You said you came home early from a business trip last week, but you were here. You helped me move the wedding decorations, remember? We spent the whole afternoon setting up chairs. My stomach dropped. He was right. I hadn't been on any business trip last week. I'd been in town the entire time, so why had Lisa told me she was cooking dinner because she missed me while I was away? The room was getting restless. People were starting to murmur, wondering what the holdup was. I looked at Lisa, and the expression on her face told me everything I needed to know. She looked terrified. Tyler was still standing next to me, waiting for an explanation. Marcus, if you weren't on a trip, then why would Lisa say? He stopped mid-sentence as the realization hit him. His face changed from confusion to understanding to horror. Oh my God, he said, loud enough that people at nearby tables could hear. I felt like the world was tilting. Everything suddenly made sense in the worst possible way. The phone calls during the wedding, her secretive texting, her lack of appetite, her discomfort during my speech about coming home to someone excited to see you. If I hadn't been on a business trip, but Lisa had cooked dinner because she missed me while I was away, then she'd been expecting me to be somewhere else that night. She'd been planning to be alone. Excuse me, I said into the microphone, my voice shaking. I need to clarify something. The room went completely silent. 200 people staring at me waiting. Lisa was shaking her head slightly, pleading with her eyes for me not to continue. I made an error in my speech, I said, my voice getting stronger. I said my wife cooked dinner for me when I came home early from a business trip last week, but I wasn't on any business trip last week. I could hear people starting to whisper. Lisa had her hand over her mouth. So the question is, I continued, looking directly at her, if I wasn't away, why did you tell me you cooked that dinner because you missed me while I was gone? The silence was deafening. Lisa was crying now, but she wasn't saying anything. Lisa, I said into the microphone, would you like to explain to everyone here why you thought I was going to be out of town last week? She stood up abruptly, knocking over her chair. I can't do this, she said, loud enough for everyone to hear. I can't do this anymore. And then she ran, just left the reception, left me standing there with a microphone in my hand, left 200 wedding guests staring at the aftermath of my marriage imploding in real time. Tyler put his hand on my shoulder. I'm so sorry, he said. I didn't mean to. You did exactly what you should have done, I told him. Then I spoke into the microphone one last time. I apologize for ruining your beautiful wedding. Tyler and Amanda deserve nothing but happiness and celebration tonight. Please continue enjoying yourselves. I handed Tyler the microphone and walked out after Lisa. I found her in the parking lot, sitting in our car, sobbing. When I got in the passenger seat, she looked at me with red, swollen eyes. How long? I asked. 6 months, she whispered. 6 months, half a year of lies, of coming home to someone who was living a double life, of believing I had a marriage when I really had nothing. Who? My trainer at the gym, she said. It started as just talking, then coffee, then. I felt numb. The night you cooked dinner, he was supposed to come over. I told him you'd be out of town. When you came home instead, I panicked and made up the story about missing you. We sat in silence for a few minutes. Inside, I could hear the reception continuing. The band was playing, people were dancing. Tyler and Amanda's perfect day was going on without us. What do you want to do now? Lisa asked. I looked at her, really looked at her, and realized I was looking at a stranger. The woman I'd loved for 8 years, the woman I'd just been praising in front of 200 people, didn't exist. She'd been a performance. I want you to pack your things and leave, I said calmly. I'll stay somewhere else tonight so you can get what you need. We'll figure out the rest later. That was 3 months ago. The divorce was finalized last week. Lisa moved in with her trainer, which I suppose makes sense since they'd already been building a relationship for half a year. Tyler and Amanda sent me a beautiful thank you note for the wedding speech. They said it was the most honest and brave thing they'd ever witnessed, and that it reminded them how important it is to be completely truthful with each other. I still feel terrible that their wedding day will always be associated with my marriage ending. But Tyler told me something that stuck with me. Sometimes the truth comes out when it needs to, even if the timing isn't perfect. At least now you know, and you can start building something real. He was right. As painful as it was to have my life fall apart in front of 200 people, it was better than continuing to live a lie, better than coming home every day to someone who was excited to see me leave. Sometimes the most beautiful celebrations do become the backdrop for the ugliest truths. But maybe that's when we need to hear those truths the most, when we're surrounded by people who love us enough to help us face reality, even when it hurts.